to a new kind of mystery video. So I'm really happy that a lot of people loved the last mystery video where I did the biggest unsolved mystery in each US state. And I actually had a request to do the most haunted place in each US state. And I thought that was a really good idea. I thought it sounded cool, so that's what I'm going to do today. And there were a lot of different articles, and it seemed like every article had totally different places listed as the most haunted place. So, like, if you think your state has a different most haunted place, like, I'm sorry, a lot of people were like commenting on the last video, like, that's not our biggest mystery, but that's just what this article says. So it's just for fun. I hope you enjoy this video, and yeah, let me know if your state has a more haunted place. But the first state is Alaska. And I think these are it's Alabama. I think these are gonna be in alphabetical order, so like that's why I didn't do timestamps on the last one, because it's just in alphabetical order. But okay, first is Alabama, which is the Sloss Furnaces. Open from 1882 to 1971. This National Historic Landmark in Birmingham was once the world's largest manufacturer of pig iron, though this achievement came at a cost. Working conditions at the plant were miserable, particularly from 1900 to 1906, under the reign of graveyard shift foreman James Slag Wormwood. Wormwood pushed his workers to take dangerous risks to speed up production, and 47 workers died during his reign. The foreman himself died by falling into a pool of molten steel, and his spirit is said to have lingered. Workers complained of an unnatural presence at the plant, as well as being pushed from behind or told to get back to work by a mysterious voice. All in all, more than 100 reports of suspected paranormal activity at Sloss Furnaces have been recorded. Alrighty. Okay, next is Alaska, which is the Red Onion Saloon. Established in 1898, the Red Onion Saloon in Skagway was a popular brothel during the Klondike Gold Rush, and today it's said to be haunted by one of the women who worked there. Known as Lydia, the resident ghost was reportedly spotted running down a hall into a room once occupied by the madam. Others claim to have smelled her perfume or to have experienced extreme cold spots. The Red Onion Saloon offers a Ghosts and Good Time Girls walking tour, which gives guests a closer look at the establishment's history. Okay, given that there's a walking tour, it sounds like it's just been made into a haunted place by people that want to make money off of it. But next is Arizona, which is the Yuma Territorial Prison. Yuma Territorial Prison has held more than 3,000 murderers, thieves, and other criminals during its 33 years in operation, from 1876 to 1909. More than 100 of whom died on the premises. Guides have reported feeling a chill near cell 14, where a prisoner named John Ryan committed suicide. Another unsettling spot is known as the dark cell, where disruptive inmates were held in isolation. While no one is known to have died in the dark cell, 2 inmates were transferred to an insane asylum shortly after being released. Visitors to Yuma Territorial Prison can get a closer look at the cell blocks, guard tower, and more. Next is Arkansas, the Crescent Hotel. Located in Eureka Springs, the Crescent Hotel was one of America's most luxurious resorts when it opened in 1886, but it closed in the 1930s due to tough economic times. In 1937, it was purchased by Norman Baker and converted to Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital. Baker had no medical training, and his supposedly groundbreaking cancer treatments were in fact a scam. Today, the hotel has been restored to its original grandeur, but Baker's patients and other spirits are still said to haunt the property. Common ghost sightings include Theodora, a patient who fumbles for her keys outside of room 419, and Michael, an Irish stonemason who fell to his death while building the hotels. Nightly ghost tours end at the morgue, still intact from the hospital and said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. Not gonna go there. Next is California, Queen Mary. Embarking on her maiden voyage in 1936, the elegant Queen Mary carried some of the world's most prominent people, from Winston Churchill to Clark Gable. But in 1940, the liner was stripped of her luxuries and retrofitted as a World War II troop ship, known as the Gray Ghost for her muted color. After the war, the Queen Mary was converted back to a passenger ship and eventually retired from service in 1967. Today, she's docked in Long Beach and serves as a floating hotel, but some ghosts of her past are said to remain. Visitors have reported seeing a lady in white, an engineer who died in the engine room, and several children in 1930s era garb. Guests of the Queen Mary can partake in several haunted tours and special events. You will never catch me staying in a haunted hotel. But also, I feel like there's gotta be a more haunted place in California. I don't know. Next is Colorado, the Stanley Hotel. Listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the century-old Stanley Hotel in Estes Park is famous for inspiring Stephen King's horror novel, The Shining. Though the hotel drew many affluent guests when it opened in the early 1900s, it had fallen into disrepair by the 1970s, when King and his wife paid a visit. They were the only guests at the hotel during their stay, and wandering the empty corridors led to Next is Connecticut, the Mark Twain House. Now a National Historic Landmark, the Hartford residence was once home to author Samuel Clemens, also known as Mark Twain, and his family from 1874 to 1891, penning some of his most well-known works here, including The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. The author called these some of the happiest and most productive years of his life. However, after daughter Susie died of meningitis in 1896, the Clemens family was too heartbroken to continue living in the house and sold it. Today, the home is maintained as a museum and is said to be haunted by a lady in white. In October, visitors can see for themselves during graveyard shift ghost tours, filled with haunted history, dark tales, and Victorian traditions. These nighttime tours are as educational as they are goosebump-inducing. Interesting. I'm starting to think this article is like a travel guide, like telling me to book tours of these places. Next is Delaware, Fort Delaware. Set on Pea Patch Island, Fort Delaware served as a Union prison camp during the Civil War, housing as many as 12,595 Confederate prisoners of war at one time in reportedly dreadful conditions. Inmates had no beds or water to wash with, and were forced to sleep on cold stone floors among vermin. Fort Delaware was abandoned in 1944 and became a state park in 1951, but its dark history has made it a popular spot for paranormal enthusiasts. The dungeons where prisoners were held is said to be a particularly active spot. Each October, Diamond State ghost investigators host a paranormal hunt through the fort. Next is Florida, St. Augustine Lighthouse. Completed in 1874 and still active to this day, the St. Augustine Lighthouse is said to be haunted by several former keepers and their families. The most famous ghosts of the lighthouse are two young sisters, Eliza and Mary, who drowned in the nearby water. Their laughter can supposedly be heard at the top of the tower late at night, while Eliza has been spotted on the grounds wearing the same blue dress she died in. For paranormal enthusiasts, the Dark of the Moon tour takes visitors inside the lighthouse tower and the keeper's house at night. Creepy. Next is Georgia, Bonaventure Cemetery. Featured on the cover of the best-selling novel Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah is hauntingly beautiful with its stately trees, lush Spanish moss, and Gothic-style tombstones. Visitors have reported paranormal activity in the cemetery for years. Some say that the statue of a girl named Gracie, who died of pneumonia at age 6, cries tears of blood at night. Others claim to have heard sounds of children playing, or to have seen statues smiling or grimacing at them. Creepy. Next is Hawaii. Hawaii Plantation Village. This outdoor museum on Oahu reconstructs life on Hawaii's sugar plantations from 1850 to 1950. Of the 25 structures on the plantation, some original, some replicas, about half are said to be haunted. There's a ghostly young girl in the Portuguese house, a choking ghost in the Okinawan house, and a doll that wanders from its case in the Puerto Rican house. Each October, the plantation is transformed into a haunted attraction with costumed actors who aren't allowed to work in the buildings by themselves due to the property's paranormal activity. Scary. Next is Idaho. Old Idaho Penitentiary. The Old Idaho Penitentiary in Boise was built in the late 1800s by its prisoners themselves, who mined nearby sandstone quarries to build the walls. The penitentiary closed in 1973 after inhumane conditions led to riots among the inmates, but its structure remains intact and are reportedly ripe with paranormal activity. Five House, the building where notorious inmate Raymond Allen Snowden was executed, seems to be the most active. Old Idaho Penitentiary is open daily for tours. Next is Illinois. Congress Plaza Hotel in Chicago. The Congress Plaza Hotel in Chicago, Illinois, almost has too many ghost stories to count. The hotel was built for the World's Fair in 1893, and there have been tales of paranormal activity ever since. For example, the serial killer H.H. Holmes is said to have lured his victims to the hotel. Hotel guests have also reported seeing the ghosts of Al Capone and President Theodore Roosevelt around the property. And if all that isn't spooky enough, the hotel is reportedly the inspiration behind Stephen King's short story 1408. Next is Indiana. Indiana Medical History Museum in Indianapolis. The Indiana Medical History Museum is located in the oldest surviving pathology building in the country. It is also reportedly haunted by the spirits of former patients of Central State Hospital. The museum, located in Indianapolis, is home to recreations of amphitheaters and laboratories that were once used by the hospital, which treated a variety of different mental health-related illnesses from 1848 until the late 1990s. Did it tell us why it was haunted? I don't know if it gave a whole lot of information. Next is Iowa. Villisca Axe Murder House. June 9th, 1912 was a tragic day for the Moore family. 6 of its members, plus 2 house guests, were brutally killed by an axe murderer who was never identified. Their restless spirits are said to still haunt the grounds. Guests can visit the house during the daytime, but to experience it in its full creepiness, you can make a reservation to spend the night. Nope, not a chance. I don't like scary stuff at all, so. Next of witchcraft and other supernatural activity over the years. There's even a local legend that claims that one of the 7 gateways to hell is located in the cemetery. Next is Kentucky, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. From 1910 to 1962, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville housed thousands of tuberculosis patients. The facility was so vast that it had its own zip code, post office, and water treatment facility. The death toll was so high that the building was also equipped with a death tunnel where bodies were discreetly removed for burial to prevent panic among the patients. Today, Waverly Hills is known as one of the most haunted places in the world. Tours and paranormal investigations are offered regularly, and ghost hunters have reported hearing slamming doors, seeing apparitions, and having objects thrown at them. Very creepy. Next is Louisiana, the Myrtles Plantation. Now a bed and breakfast, the antebellum era Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville is touted as one of America's most haunted homes. Its most famous ghost is Chloe, a slave girl who took revenge on her owner by poisoning him and his family. Her apparition has since been spotted roaming the house in a white apron and green turban. Guests have also reported hearing footsteps on the stairs, the sounds of children playing, and a grand piano that inexplicably repeats the same haunting chord over and over again until someone enters the room. Very creepy. Next is Maine, Mount Hope Cemetery. One of the nation's oldest cemeteries, Mount Hope in Bangor, may look familiar to fans of the movie Pet Sematary, adapted from Stephen King's 1983 horror novel. King himself made a cameo in a scene that was filmed here, in which he played a minister presiding over a funeral. Plus, actual gravestones in the cemetery inspired the names of some of his most well-known characters. Carrie from the 1974 novel, and Georgie from 1986's It. Many fans of the author make the journey to Bangor each year to see the places that inspired him, and this is a must-visit stop. Doesn't sound super haunted, just like a good place for people that like haunted stuff. Next is Maryland, Antietam National Battlefield. With 23,000 soldiers killed, wounded, or missing, the bloodiest battle of the Civil War took place at Antietam Creek near Sharpsburg in 1862. Today, visitors to the battlefield have reported hearing gunfire or smelling gunpowder when no one else was in sight, or seeing mysterious figures in Confederate uniforms. Some also claim to have spotted strange balls of blue light at Burnside Bridge, where many soldiers were hastily buried. Next is Massachusetts, the Lizzie Borden House. In 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were brutally murdered in their Fall River murders remain unsolved to this day. The house has been converted into a bed and breakfast and museum, and those who have spent the night have reported hearing a woman crying and seeing apparitions. Creepy. Next is Michigan. Mackinac Island, the site of two major battles during the War of 1812 and a host of other violent events over the years. The picturesque island is actually a hotbed of paranormal activity. One notably haunting spot is the Drowning Pool, where a witch hunt was conducted in the 1700s and early 1800s. 7 women who were accused of being witches were thrown into the water with rocks tied to their feet. If they sank, they were deemed innocent. Other spooky spots include the Grand Hotel, said to be haunted by an evil entity with glowing red eyes, and Mission Point Resort, reportedly haunted by a young college student who committed suicide. That's interesting that that one is an entire island. Like, I know a ton of people live there. Next is Minnesota. Wabasha Street Caves. During Prohibition, these former mining caves in St. Paul were turned into a speakeasy that became a hotspot for gangsters, including John Dillinger and Ma Barker. Rumor has it that 3 gangsters who were gunned down in the caves are buried under the floors. Though the bodies haven't been found, you can see the bullet holes from the incident during a tour of the caves. No way you're getting me to tour haunted caves. Next is Mississippi. The McRaven House. Built in 1797 and expanded in 1836 and 1849, the McRaven House in Vicksburg has been called a time capsule of the South, as each addition left the previous rooms untouched. Several former residents died in the home, and it served as a Confederate field hospital during the Civil War, 2 factors that made the property ripe with paranormal activity. Mary Elizabeth Howard is said to be the most active spirit. The lady of the house, she died in 1836, shortly after childbirth, in one of the upstairs bedrooms. McRaven offers haunted tours year-round and is also available for paranormal investigations. Next is Missouri. Limp Mansion. Now a restaurant and inn, the Limp Mansion in St. Louis is marked by 60 years of tragedy for the wealthy Limp family who originally lived there. At least 4 members of the doomed dynasty, owners of the Limp Brewing Company, died in the house. Today, their spirits are said to linger, and guests may encounter them on a weekly ghost tour. Next is Montana. Bannack Ghost Town. Bannack. Founded in 1862 after gold was discovered in a nearby creek, this historic ghost town was once the site of a thriving boom town where prospectors and businessmen flocked. Over the years, Bannack slowly became abandoned as its inhabitants moved on to bigger cities and new opportunities. Today, the weathered structures stand preserved, serving as architectural skeletons of Montana's rugged past. A visit to Bannock may give you a glimpse of a long-forgotten miner clutching a cache of gold, or the faint sounds of a piano in the old saloon. Next is Nebraska, state capitol building. Many spooky tales surround this landmark building in Lincoln, one involving Christmas lights that once decorated the dome. According to this urban legend, prisoners were tasked with the dangerous job of hanging the lights in exchange for shorter sentences. One of these men reportedly panicked, had a heart attack, and fell to his death. Some say you can still hear his sobs and screams to this day near the building. Next is Nevada, Mizpah Hotel. Built in 1907 and renovated in 2011, the historic Mizpah Hotel in Tonopah retained many things from its Wild West past, including the spirit of a woman murdered on the premises. In the early 20th century, the lady in red reportedly met her demise on the 5th floor of the hotel and is now a resident ghost. Guests can book the Mizpah's Lady in Red suite and enjoy high thread count bedding, a clawfoot tub, and perhaps a haunting. Next is New Hampshire, Mount Washington Hotel. The Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods was built in 1902 by businessman Joseph Stickney, who died the following year. His widow, Carolyn, is believed to haunt the property to this day. Hotel staff have reportedly spotted her descending the stairs for dinner, and have also noticed lights inexplicably turning on and off in one of the towers. Room 314, where her four-poster maple bed still resides, is the best place to see her. Guests have reported waking up to find a woman sitting at the end of the bed, slowly brushing her hair. So many of these are hotels. You would never catch me staying in one of these. Next is New Jersey, Pine Barrens. The stretch of forested area in southern New Jersey is supposedly home to the Jersey Devil, said to be the cursed 13th child of a woman known as Mother Leeds. According to legend, the baby boy transformed dramatically just after he was born, sprouting leathery wings, horns, and a forked tail. He killed the midwife before flying into the chimney and disappearing into the pines. There have been many reported sightings of the Jersey Devil in the Pine Barrens over the years, and even some in nearby towns. That's like the craziest one so far, I feel like. Next is New Mexico, Roswell. In 1947, a rancher named Mac Brazel discovered strange debris in his sheep pasture about 75 miles outside of Roswell, while officials said the wreckage came from a crashed weather balloon and later attributed it to the classified Project this day, Roswell is a popular destination for those interested in all things extraterrestrial, home to a UFO museum, UFO tours, and a UFO festival. I don't know if I'd consider that haunted, but... Next is New York. Rolling Hills Asylum. Opened in 1827 as a poorhouse, Rolling Hills Asylum in the town of Bethany originally catered to unwed mothers, widows, orphans, the disabled, and the mentally challenged. Eventually, the building was expanded to accommodate the criminally insane, making for a strange mix of personalities. Today, it's said to be one of the most haunted buildings in New York, with paranormal activity detected throughout the property. One of the most chilling spots is the graveyard, where some 1,700 bodies are believed to be buried, many in unmarked graves. A commonly reported apparition is a 7-foot-tall shadow man, believed to be the spirit of an inmate named Roy, who suffered from gigantism. Alrighty. Next is North Carolina. Biltmore Estate. Though it's one of North Carolina's most popular tourist attractions, the Biltmore Estate is also one of the area's most haunted spots. Built between 1889 and 1895 by George Vanderbilt, the magnificent home contains 250 rooms, including a library where George spent a great deal of time. Today, some visitors of the mansion claim to have spotted him in the library, while others have heard his wife, Edith, whisper his name. I've been there. That's the one that I have been to, and I never heard anything about it being haunted. Like, it's just a big tourist attraction. I didn't know it was haunted. Next is North Dakota. Fort Abraham Lincoln. In 1873, Lieutenant Colonel George Custer moved to the 7th Cavalry to Fort Abraham Lincoln, located in what's now Bismarck, where he built and lived in a beautiful home with his wife, Libby. In 1876, General Custer led his troops to the Battle of Little Bighorn, where he and about half his troops died, leaving Libby widowed. The Custer home burned down in 1874, only to be reconstructed in 1989, which some say resurrected the men and women who lived and died there. Interpreters and tourists have reported many instances of paranormal activity. A woman wearing a black dress has been seen looking out a second-floor window of the Custer house. Footsteps can be heard pacing the sergeant's quarters in the barracks, and a shadowy figure stalks the commissary at night. Visitors can go on historian-led or self-guided tours, but likely won't hear about the hauntings. Next is Ohio. Ohio State Reformatory. Built in 1886, the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield was intended to be a prison focused on reform and rehabilitation. Instead, it's left behind a legacy of abuse, torture, and murder. If the castle-like facade of the prison looks familiar, it's likely because it stood in for the Shawshank State Penitentiary in the film adaptation of Stephen King's The Shawshank Redemption. prison was officially closed in 1990, it is still occasionally opened for tours. Visitors report feelings of unease and have even been touched, scratched, or had their hair pulled. Next is Oklahoma, Gilcrease Museum. Based in Tulsa, the Gilcrease Museum highlights the art collection of oil baron Thomas Gilcrease. Gilcrease was immensely proud of his collection, and it seems he didn't want to part with it, even in death. Visitors and nighttime security staff alike have reported seeing apparitions of Gilcrease wandering in his garden, near where his remains are entombed in a mausoleum. Next is Oregon, Piddock Mansion. When newspaper owner Henry Piddock and his wife Georgiana retired, the pair wanted to enjoy their old age in style, so they built the Piddock Mansion in Portland. Unfortunately, less than 5 years after moving in, both of them passed away, but some claim the couple never truly left. Visitors of the home, which is now owned by the city and open to the public, often report strange occurrences, like smelling roses, Georgiana's favorite flower, in rooms with no greenery, or noticing a childhood portrait of Henry relocating itself on its own. Next is Pennsylvania, Eastern State Penitentiary. One of the most well-known prisons in the world, Eastern State Penitentiary's reputation precedes its haunted history. Built in 1829, the prison quickly became known for its barbaric prisoner reform techniques, which included but were not limited to keeping prisoners in the dark and total isolation for weeks on end. Today, those who visit the prison often report hearing footsteps, screams, and moans, among other unexplained noises. Next is Rhode Island, Providence City Hall. More than municipal business takes place at Providence's historic City Hall. Staff have reported seeing chairs move on their own and hearing whispers in empty rooms. It's believed that this activity is caused by the ghost of the city's former mayor, Thomas Doyle, who was buried in the building. Next is South Carolina, Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. The Magnolia Plantation and Gardens in Charleston has been owned by the same family since 1680. All sorts of unexplained occurrences take place here. When no one is around, people have heard mysterious music, the sounds of a child laughing, and distant coughs and growls. Paranormal investigators haven't been able to pinpoint who exactly is behind the paranormal activity or what happened Tennessee. Bell Witch Cave. Legend has it that in the 1800s, the Bell Witch tormented the family of John Bell near the town of Adams. For years, the family heard rattling chains and heavy knocking on walls, which culminated with John Bell dying under mysterious circumstances. It's said that the malevolent spirit lived in a neighboring cave, which became known as Bell Witch Cave. Today, you can explore the cave for yourself to see if you too will be visited by the Bell Witch. Next is Texas, USS Lexington. During World War II, this impressive vessel spent 21 months in combat. No fewer than 4 times the Japanese reported that the blue ship had sunk, only to find her reappear again. Her nickname became appropriately the Blue Ghost. Today, the ship is a museum known for its historic exhibits and supernatural activity. Over the years, many guests have met Charlie, a tour guide who wears a traditional naval uniform. The ship has never actually employed a tour guide named Charlie. The helpful spirit is thought to be the ghost of a sailor. Very creepy. Next is Utah, Moon Lake. When avid campers visit Moon Lake in High Unitas for picturesque views of the clear alpine lake, they sometimes get more than they bargained for. Over the years, campers have reported seeing the apparition of a little girl who drowned in the lake in broad daylight. Many identify her as having bright blue lips and clothes dripping with water as she approaches them. Creepy. Next is Vermont, Gold Brook Bridge. Though its true name is Gold Brook Bridge, this historic covered bridge in Stowe has long been known as Emily's Bridge. It's believed that a broken-hearted woman named Emily perished on the bridge, though accounts differ as to how. What is consistent, though, is the eerie experience passers-by have shared when crossing the bridge. Many report finding long scratches on their car, or even feel they've been scratched themselves. Next is Virginia, Bacon's Castle. If you're looking for the ultimate haunted house, look no further than Surrey's Bacon's Castle. Built in 1665, the castle is the oldest brick home in the country. So it should come as no surprise that paranormal investigators are drawn to the property by all sorts of otherworldly phenomena. There are many theories about what causes these ghostly experiences, which often include spectral fireballs, floating heads, and disembodied voices. But there have been no definitive links established to people who once resided on the property. Next is Washington, Kell's Irish Pub. It's not hard to believe that a bar housed in a former mortuary might have a hint of paranormal activity. In Seattle, that bar is Kell's Irish Pub. The bar has 2 regular ghosts who make themselves known to patrons. A little girl with red hair is said to enjoy playing pranks on adults and playing with kids who visit with their parents. luminous mirror on nights when a live band plays. Interesting. Next is West Virginia, Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Beginning in the 1600s, West Virginia's Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Lunatic. Sorry. I've been reading a lot. Served as a home for the severely mentally ill. Thousands were committed to the hospital over the years, and it's believed that hundreds died there. Today, reports of apparitions, unexplained voices, and eerie sounds draw paranormal investigators from all over the country to this historic building. Next is Wisconsin, Pfister Hotel. Opened in 1893, Pfister Hotel is a luxurious landmark in downtown Milwaukee. The historic property is said to be haunted by Charles Pfister, the tannery magnate, newspaper publisher, and financier who owned the hotel. Pfister, ever loyal to his former home, has been known to spook rival MLB players in town to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers. Rival players across the league have reported everything from flickering lights to inexplicably locked doors and random pounding on the walls. Very creepy. Alright, and the last one is Wyoming, Fort Laramie. Built in the 1830s, Fort Laramie was constructed when Wyoming was still rugged and wild. The fort became an outpost for fur trappers and others making their way west. While she's not the only spirit who haunts this historic fort, the Lady in Green is one of the most iconic. Believed to be the daughter of a trapper who visited the fort, legend goes that one day the strong-willed little girl rode her horse away from the fort and was never seen again. Every 7 years, she is said to retrace her route around the historic site in her signature green riding attire and feathered hat. Again, very creepy. That was really interesting. I don't think I'd heard of most of these places. I've been to the Biltmore Mansion, but I hadn't heard of the rest, so that was interesting. I don't know. Let me know if you believe these places are actually haunted. I don't know. But yeah, I'm sorry for the ridiculous amount of background noise that was going on behind me. I didn't know a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. could be this loud, but yeah. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've been to any of these places or heard of them, or if your state has a more haunted place, let me know. But yeah,